Hold on, we just need to start the live stream.
Okay, you can go ahead, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Land Division Committee to order, and we'll start with the first item is the approval of the minutes of April 28th. Are there any questions or errors or omissions?
I know.
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Yes, John?
through you to Nancy, just a couple of small things. In the summary for E16 through E19, the word, it says that prior the final approval, it should read prior to the final approval. I know it's a small item, but it's in all four of them.
Okay. I'll make that change. Thank you.
Any other?
Also, I had another item as well. Dennis is here, so maybe he'd like to confirm that, but for E2421 and for E2321 and E2421, it indicates Dennis voted no, but I think he voted yes.
Okay, we'll make sure we change that.
Oh, he did vote no.
No.
Did vote.
I don't know.
Oh, you did vote no, yep.
Yes.
Hang on, which one? I'm just scrolling through my notes here. Which one was?
2321 and 2421. You voted no on E2221, but I thought you had voted yes on 23 and 2421.
Well, E23, he moved it, and then it shows that he voted no.
Okay, we'll check the video and we'll correct accordingly. Thank you for,
Okay.
Sorry, I have to go back my notes. I'm just drawing a blank here right now.
yeah, me too, so
Okay.
no problem. We'll go back and check the video. We'll make sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you. No,
A mover and a seconder,
Do it, Dennis.
moved by Rosemary.
Seconded by
Jack,
Jack.
Jack. Okay, we'll call a vote for the minutes. Approval of the minutes from April, the April meeting with edits as noted. John Andrews.
Yes.
Oh, you are there. Great.
You're good, John.
Ian Fleck,
Yes. Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
yes,
Jack Van Kasteren,
yes.
Doug Aldridge.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the next item is swearing in of Ashlyne Laverty.
So I think officially we have to swear in Ashlyne as the new secretary treasurer for the Land Division Committee. Ashlyne, I think, has done this before, so she's going to let me know how to do this.
Pretty sure we just need a mover and a seconder,
Okay,
and it's that simple, and then we do a vote on it.
so it would be moved to,
Appoint myself as the secretary treasurer of the Land Division Committee.
That's right.
all right. So mover and seconder.
Can we have a move?
Also move.
Moved by
Move.
Rosemary,
I'll second.
seconder. John?
I'll second. Yep.
John Selden.
I have to like
Call the vote.
call the vote on this. Do you want me to call the vote? All right, you call the vote? Okay. All right, so call to vote. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes,
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes.
and Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Go.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome, Ashlyne. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I look forward to it as well.
Okay, the next one is discussion on consent application form. Is that right, Nancy?
That's right. So I can scroll through. Can you go to that, the application form? So Ian and I spoke about this. He would like to go through the application forms themselves and go through any issues that we're seeing and also to discuss some of the appendixes, just to make sure that the wording is correct and that the application form is correct overall, so we can ensure that the right form and all the information that's needed is on the web page. So first off, does anyone have any questions on, let's go through it page by page and then we'll just jump to any items that people have any questions or concerns about. So first page is the rules of procedure. It starts with that to give the applicant an idea of the information that's required. Any issues with that first page that anyone sees?
I have a question before you get into it too deep, Nancy.
Mhm.
Just background, is there been some changes to this recently that we're gonna review this, or why is this coming up now?
I think it's always timely anyways to look at this from a Planning Act perspective. There was a recent change in November to this application form. The provincial policy statement changed, so we made sure that the right language was there and we tweaked a few of the other questions as well. But I think it's about having a conversation too about some of the things that are required. And if the wording is correct, if we're getting the right information, I think there's been some concerns about people submitting certain things that is not enough, or potentially we need more information. So if that's the case, then I think we can have a little conversation about that, just to make sure that if there needs to be additional information on these application forms, then we're asking for it, or if we need to be more specific, or if we need to change some of the questions, and we can also do that. So
I just like to say, Jack, there's sometimes the forms are filled out and they don't list all the farms and where exactly they are and what they
Right.
have. Some of the
Right.
forms aren't filled out totally. And I think it's only right that everybody fills out the forms.
I agree.
They're done properly and every item's filled out.
Yep,
Like,
I agree with that. I just wanted to make sure that I was aware if this document that we're gonna review, if it's had some recent changes, if so, could you bring those to our attention as you go through it, Nancy?
I will. There really is minor changes that we've made only in November, like I said, based on
Okay.
the provincial policy statement, but I'll make a note of that when we get to it. So.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, and also based on, we had a discussion when I first started with the committee about photos and mapping. And we've had added that into the rules of procedure as well to help to assist in any applications that are submitted. So that we'll also note that when we get to that section. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question, Nancy. On the notice of hearing, it says by personal service or regular registered mail. Can that not be delivered electronically?
There's been a lot of questions actually in general about if a notice is considered legal when it's not, when it's delivered via email. We actually grappled with this with my other municipality that I used to work for as well. The only real issue is that we don't have email addresses for everyone, so we still have to rely on mailings for the most part. But we do implement, if an applicant has given us, for instance, an email address, we will send correspondence via email. Because obviously, especially for lots of different reasons, it's the preferred way to go. So we've never been challenged on it for those types of things. We do still also mail hard copies of the notice of decision, for instance, to the applicant, as that seems to be what's required based on the legislation. So it's basically a balancing act of using email, but also still employing and mailing out hard copy notices and decisions. So.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I may on that, my partner does a lot of legal work, and they've had direction rulings, whatever you want to call it, from the various judges and law societies saying that email is an acceptable way of delivery. So what I might suggest is, since anybody who appeals our decisions would appeal it to what is it? Is it the who do they appeal it to now? What's it called?
The
Land
Local
use
Planning
planning
Approval Tribunal. Mhm.
Yes.
I would email the clerk and just get a clarification from him or her that would say, is email acceptable today? Because the courts aren't sitting, these hearings are all remote, everything's done electronically. So I think if you get that, then we're on safe grounds illegally if we just email it and don't bother. And mailing, I don't know. I'm at the point where the amount of time and effort, if somebody doesn't have an email address, is that for us to worry about? Or do we demand you must have an email address to send stuff out? I mean, why photocopy 200 pages of something when you can just email it out to somebody? So
Nancy?
So
I think, Nancy, one of the things, and part of it is it's got to be, they're asking for it to be mailed out. Some areas, the email isn't that good yet. I think you get some of the rural areas like where Duga, I'm not saying where Duga is, there's some areas where you can wait a day or 24 hours to get an email. Is that right, Doug?
At least, yeah.
And that's why a lot of the lawyers in small municipalities are asking that it be mailed, then they have the copy there.
Mhm. So through you, Mr. Chair, the local municipalities have all responded that they wish to receive everything by email. So that makes it a lot easier for that process anyways. So when it comes to local municipalities and all of our circulation lists for the most part, i.e. any of the stakeholders, hydro, people like that we would have to mail to, we can do that through email, which really helps tremendously, saving costs and time as well. It's really just the public, which we don't really have any other option. We have the signs and that covers off in case there is some sort of issue. So that way somebody is always aware of what is happening based on a sign on the property. But at this time, all we have available to us is mailings for the public. So.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, great. So that first page, there wasn't any changes that I'm aware of that I had administered. So we'll move on to the second page. This is where we replaced the detailed sketch and required better drawings. I think overall we're seeing an improvement in the sketches that have been submitted. And for the most part, I think I would say about 60 to 70% of the sketches are actually done by a surveyor or someone with some ability to do sketches. So that's good. That I think that we've seen the bar being raised in terms of the sketches being provided. Is there any feedback on that from anyone?
Question then on procedure. So Nancy, if something comes in and the detailed sketch isn't quite up to standards, do you then send it back with the indication that they have to do better for the application to be accepted as a whole? Is that how it
Yes, and sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Jack. In fact, we did that recently on a couple of applications where it had initially come in and the sketch was, my rule of thumb is if we can't understand it, then the public likely won't understand it. So, so we had to contact the applicant and ask them to resubmit something that was a lot clearer. And so that's worked out over the last few months. Having this detailed sketch information there because it really helps people to understand this is what we expect. This is what needs to be on a sketch, for instance.
So by the time it ends up on an application, or sorry, on an agenda, then all the proper documentation should be with it.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this page? No?
Go
Okay,
ahead.
next page. So that's the detailed sketch that we provide. So hopefully that's clear in terms of an example. Next page. If no one has any questions. So this is the actual application for consent. Obviously, it has all of the information. One thing to note is a lot of this information is required or mandated under the Planning Act, under one of the regulations. So certainly a lot of these questions, some of them might be able to be finessed in terms of what we're asking for, or maybe a bit of a wording change if it's not clear. But for the most part, these are all things that we have to ask for or are required to ask for under the Planning Act. So Any questions on the first page or any issues with the first page? Just as
No.
a side note too, at the end of the meeting, we'll need to discuss validation of title, as that's come up recently. And it's something that I'm not sure that the committee has dealt with a lot. And so I'd like to get some feedback on that, because I think we would need a strategy going forward on these types of applications. So we can discuss that as well at the end. So the second page obviously has a description of the lands to be severed and retained, the type of servicing that's proposed or available. Any questions? Any clarification needed? No? Okay, next page.
Nancy, can I just want to go back to back one page, right at the very bottom, about easements. And we were simply asking the landowner to describe the easement. Is it necessary, or would it be a good idea for us to have the landowner submit a copy of the easement, or to require it? Is it required to be put on the sketch that any easements be put on that, or covenants be put on that, so that we have the whole picture? Because a lot of times these things can be complicated legally, and perhaps we're not getting the best description, and it may actually hurt the landowner than help them if they don't describe it properly.
Mhm.
Is that something that we should ask for? At least put it on the sketch. Or should we have a copy? Should you have a copy? Maybe we don't need it as part of the mail out, but should you have a copy so you can make sure that it's clear, the easement's clear?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's certainly something that we can start asking for if the committee feels it's a good idea. For the most part, if it's a sketch that's being done by a surveyor, they're required to show that easement. If it's a specific area, an instrument number, though, it's typically shown on the sketch. But by all means, if there needs to be more details about that, then we can, if they know that there is some sort of easement or a restricted covenant on the property, we can ask for a copy of that to ensure that it won't affect the severance.
One question, Nancy.
Mhm.
We've had a few where the hydro lines are easements through farms, and we should know them if where that easement is, because how close it is to one of the buildings. So Hydro One knows what's happening too. That's why I think that easement should be on that form. Any other members, I think, to say? But we do have a number of hydro lines running through farms yet.
In water lines.
And water lines, yes. We have a lot of water lines with easements through fields, because they never went down. They don't go down. There's not enough room on the side roads.
So there's municipal water lines on private property, is that what you're saying?
We do have that in some areas, and some other areas do too.
Okay.
No, through you, Mr. Chair, I think if there's an easement, it should be shown on the drawing.
Agree.
Yeah,
Any other
agreed.
comments?
I'd agree with that.
Okay,
Comments, go ahead.
next
Nancy.
page. Okay, yep, so now we're on the page 7. This, generally, the questions asked are about, if it's a lot addition, we need to determine essentially, if the lot that is to be enlarged was the subject of a previous application, because that might affect the ability for the lands to merge. So we'll need to ascertain that up front. So that's kind of one of the questions that we have to ask as well. And then there's information about Appendix C and MDS, so minimum distance separation, only really applies in certain instances. Really, it only applies if the severed surplus farm dwelling, for instance, has a barn on it. That would affect a surplus farm dwelling based on the minimum distance separation policies that OMAFRA has. But otherwise, it doesn't normally, not for the most part, it doesn't affect our applications. It's very rare, actually, so. Some other questions that need to be asked. What is the official plan? That sort of thing. Any questions on any of those? No? Okay, next page. So, this is an old application, I just noticed, because it says Provincial Policy Statement 2014, which is not correct. It should be Provincial Policy Statement 2020, so we'll make sure that, obviously, going forward, we use the newest application form. And then some other questions about who pre-consultation occurred with. For the most part, we encourage consultation with the local municipalities since they're the ones that will have the lion's share of conditions and comments. So we usually encourage that as well as touching base with our staff, the County of Elgin staff, so we're aware of the application coming forward in case there's any considerations from our perspective, such as natural heritage or additional criteria that we have in our official plan. So that's generally the process that we have. And then I note that in section 28, we'll want to make sure that that coincides with our rules of procedure and our sketches. So we'll make a note of that.
Yes.
So here in 28, then, through you, Mr. Chair, we
Yes.
have to add that any easements located on the premises need to be shown, because I don't see it on here now.
Yeah, it is. It's very last,
Is it?
very
Is it?
last notation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's-
great. Okay,
Perfect.
perfect. Okay, next page. And then obviously the signature of the applicant, the affidavit, sworn declaration. We at this time are not commissioning applications, but obviously once that the stay at home orders, and at some point we're going to be commissioning applications again. So that'll be something we will be doing in the coming months, I'm sure. Next page. And then just some information about it. So next page. This is the authorization to appoint an agent. Next page. This is our process checklist, so we'll make sure that going through this, that all of the information that should be there is there. So we'll have to double check on Appendix A and make sure it's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
through you, Mr. Chair, Nancy, are we sticking with the $1,250?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this time, I don't have a reason to change that fee. I'm actually not even sure the process, so I'd have to look into, I believe there's a bylaw for fee schedules that I believe is going to be going at some point to our council, for county council.
So it's going-
But if there needs to be a change, that should be something we should look at. But at this time, $1,250 hasn't come up as an issue.
I think one of the reasons I asked was when we first started getting together as this new group, one of the things that came out of BAM was the sense that of the 1,250, and correct me if I'm wrong, absolutely nothing goes to the community. That is to BAM or Dunwich or wherever. And yet there's a sense that there's a fair amount of input from the community. So I was just wondering about the 1,250 in general. How long has it been in place, and does it need to be increased just as is? And is there ever any expectation of anything being any financial return to the municipality?
No, there is not. Right now, it's this is a county function, and they, years ago when the plan division started, the municipalities each hired a planner to do their work, but then it went to like a separate board. So there was nothing, the county didn't return anything. Is that right, Rosemary?
That was my understanding. And the 1,250, I think, is because land division is self-sufficient,
Yes.
is my understanding.
That's right.
You know, like, we don't take any taxpayers' money. That's strictly from the applications.
That's right.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we administer the Land Division Committee on behalf of the County of Elgin. And so therefore that $1,250 covers all of our fees, notices, mailings, emails, time, et cetera. The fees that local municipalities charge, several of the municipalities do charge a fee. It's at the tail end. It's usually at the time of clearing the conditions, and they ask for certain fees depending on, and I'm not sure even what those fees are, but every municipality certainly has the ability to, if they wanted to ask for additional fees, given that they are, like you said, spending time and effort on providing responses to the Land Division Committee for applications. It would just be a separate fee that they themselves would charge and collect as part of likely the final approval, for instance, which is normally, I think, when they collect those fees.
Yeah.
So I think if some of the municipalities are looking to potentially recoup some costs, for instance, then that would be something that they could explore based on their time and effort on applications, I think. But that would be a separate fee that they would charge, separate of the Land Division Committee fee.
All right,
That
well,
makes
thank you for that. Actually, that was all very helpful. And indeed, the municipalities do require, or at least certainly BAM gets the applicant pays the planning fee for IBI that does it for here.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah, no, that's a great help. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other
Okay.
questions? Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay.
If I could just make one more comment on that 1250. Yeah, to me, that's an administrative function. And it's up to Nancy and the CAO or whomever just to make sure that that fee is reflective. We don't want to be caught where we are undercharging or overcharging. We don't need it to be down to the exact penny, but I think that that's administration has to make sure that that fee is justifiable. And if it is, if it needs to be raised to justify the cost of all the things that are going on, should be raised. But if it meets our costs, it's fine, but that's administration.
That's right. And there is a committee of county council that does set fees. It's the same as local municipalities. They set their fees every 2 or 3 years.
Through Mr. Chair, that's correct. And at this time, the fees that, like I said, that we charge cover the cost of the committee as well as cost of the committee. Obviously, you get some fees as well for attending and that sort of thing. And I think we would only really be considering changing those fees at this time if we noticed that there were certain things that couldn't be covered anymore. For instance, the fees of running the committee started to become problematic based on lots of different factors. So I think once we're in a position like that, then that would be when we might review our fees as well. And I think we also look to the other municipalities that run land division committees as well. It's always good to gauge and see what everyone else in other municipalities is charging for these types of applications, and just ensure that we're in step with that sort of fee structure. But yeah, we should review them, like I said, as Ian indicated, every couple of years to make sure that they're correct.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, so process checklist, like I said, we will go over those and ensure that it's correct. Next page.
Sorry.
Okay, so this is Appendix B. So what we've done is we used to have a form that was previously Appendix B, and that was the applicant was required to get the mailing labels for an application from the local municipality to submit to us. But because the system that everyone uses is the Elgin County mapping, in order to generate those mailing labels, we no longer require that. So we obviously as staff will do the work to get the mailing labels. The only one that we will require is from the municipality of Central Elgin because they have a separate mapping system. So they do not use the Elgin County mapping system. So we do rely on them to give us the most up-to-date labels that they can provide for any applications in Central Elgin. So we take care of that when we receive an application. One of the first things we do is then notify Central Elgin and we ask for the labels in order to administer the mailing.
Nancy,
Go ahead, Rosemary.
it says Appendix B, but under number 18 of the application, it says Appendix C.
Yes, we need to fix some of those references.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so then this is Appendix B. So this is the surplus farm dwelling information form. I'm assuming, I don't know how long this form has actually been around for. I'm assuming that Susan Galloway would have developed it through her previous role based on feedback from the committee to ensure that those that were submitting for a surplus farm dwelling severance were either a farmer or a buyer for the home and provided the appropriate information that we were looking for. So that first section is details of the subject lands. Is there any issue with anything we're asking for in that section.
No questions?
Nope.
Okay, go proceed, Nancy.
Okay, so section 2 is the proposed transaction. So it says identify the proposed transaction, i.e. The proposed severance. So this is where they need to detail that. And then identify how and why the dwelling is surplus to the needs of the owner purchasing farmer due to farm consolidation. So this is where they need to explain if there's, like I said, the buyer of the house or the a farmer selling the house or someone purchasing the farmlands. This needs to be described in this section. Any questions?
Just one question on, this is where this has come up in the last year. We've had in some municipalities, the form isn't really filled out because the people buying the farm and asking for the house to be severed are businesses out of a big city. And it's not the way that was the question that has happened in a couple of municipalities. Is there any other questions on that or comments?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I think this form has been left blank sometimes, maybe on purpose, because it couldn't be filled out properly. So I think we really have to stress that this form is filled out the way it's supposed to be.
That's right. Any
And
other
just
comments? Go ahead,
back to
Duke.
one there. It says the year the surplus dwelling was constructed. Now, is that 10 years? Is that consistent across all municipalities and the county, or does that vary in some municipalities, that 10-year stipulation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's only one or two municipalities that I'm aware of that have specific criteria that say, has your surplus farm dwelling been constructed within the last 5 or 10 years? I can't remember. I think it's 10 years for Dutton right now. And I think they were.
Here's in West Ogden too.
They may be, yes. So, and I think they may be, Dutton is potentially looking at 5 years, which is something that's come up recently through our applications. So it is not the type of criteria that is across the board. So really asking that question is specifically for the information of certain municipalities, basically, because other municipalities, it's not a criteria or a consideration.
So the county has no stipulation on that at the county level.
No, that's right.
No,
Okay,
they don't.
all right.
Any other questions? Go ahead,
Mr. Chair.
Duke.
No, that's good.
Okay,
It's,
that's
John Sullivan.
John.
What, yes, I actually, I just want to follow up again. Also, I agree that after this may be an exaggeration, but it's not unusual to see it not filled out. Where does that leave us if it's not filled out, or if we're aware enough of the application, if it's not filled out correctly, does that automatically stop us from considering the application? How is Appendix B being used as far as our decision-making process is concerned? How does that implement, or if it isn't completed, we've still passed applications?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, that's part of where, if somebody was in attendance at a meeting, the questions can be asked with respect to that. Confirmation on certain things can also be asked at that meeting. And also ultimately, if the committee decides that there's not enough information to make a decision, you can ask for a deferral, which has happened. Certainly there's been 1 or 2 circumstances I can recall in recent memory where we've had applications that the information that was provided, there were questions on it and the applicant wasn't able to necessarily answer it to the committee's satisfaction. And so there was a deferral that was passed, and then they were required to provide more information, follow up on that. And ultimately, I think there was support from the committee for their application, but in these particular circumstances, the form can be filled out, but a lot of the times the committee or staff for that matter may not know the particulars of, for instance, a lot of you know people personally or in your community. So you may know certain circumstances that might not be information that staff would ever be privy to. So that's where it's important that if you have feedback or you see any issues with forms, it's important to let us know as soon as possible so we can either get the information that you're looking for or alternatively to recommend a deferral if additional information is not gotten in a timely fashion. So.
To you, Mr. Chair. I'll
Yeah.
add a
Jeff.
comment to that.
I ju-
So Nancy, you just said that staff wouldn't be aware, but technically you would be aware because the application would state the reason for this severance application is surplus farm dwelling. And if it states that in the application, then it's imperative that this Appendix B form is completed. Otherwise, the application goes back.
That's right, Jack.
Agreed. Yep.
Agreed.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I agree with you. I'm more thinking of those circumstances where somebody has completed this application and the form, but the information they provided wasn't correct because a committee member is aware of the circumstances surrounding the farm, for instance, and questions were brought up. So
Okay.
in
But it
those
should-
circumstances, certainly, then we're going to rely on that. And again, if we do our best to review these, sometimes stuff slips through the cracks. If you notice these things when you're reviewing the agenda packages, please let us know as soon as possible so we can ensure that the appropriate information is provided. If it needs to be, additional information needs to be done, then we need to know that up front too. So we can do our job and ensure that all the information is there for the committee to make a decision.
Yep, that's fair.
Okay, everybody satisfied with that?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, so the next section is details of the lands farmed by the person to whom the dwelling is surplus. So to whom is the dwelling surplus? The owner, the purchasing farmer, total area of farmland owned. And this is where people often attach additional pages to this. Identify the locations of lands farmed by the owner, purchasing farmer. So that's the information that's required under section 3.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Rosemary.
Does it have to be in metric? I have no idea how many hectares I own. I know I have 50 acres. And I wouldn't put it down in metric. I would put it down in the other.
Through you, Mr. Chair, everything we do is metric, including the application forms. I don't know if the Planning Act actually says metric or not, but for the most part, we operate under metric because obviously that's the kind of the what we use generally. I understand that certainly you may only know acres.
But if I filled out acres, you could convert it.
Yes, absolutely. It's just that if we ask for metric, someone can also convert that too, right? So,
And just one thing, Nancy, that's one of the reasons I think we're asking that surveyors do just a rough diagram of it, because they can provide it with meters. And sometimes when it's in feet, and we've seen it where it doesn't come back right, because somebody says, well, it's this in meters, but they didn't have it just right. Or this is the feet, and then if it's more than 3% out, they have to come back. Is that right, Nancy?
that's right. And for our sketches and the surveys that are provided, that's always done in metric as well. Like I said, that's the accepted standard measurement, I think, for Ontario and Canada. So we generally use metric. We try to do our best with the notices, recognizing that people may want feet or meter, or acres. So we do provide both measurements for any notices that go out. But generally, we ask for metric for our application forms.
Yeah. Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, not on that. I've got a question if we go back once we're done with this form.
Go ahead.
If we go back to page 9, my question is this. We're asking for the signatures to be declared before a commissioner.
Yes.
And I understand the legal rationale, but it's also a cost to the landowner. It's another step. Is it that necessary to have that? Do townships, do the counties, do they require every time somebody signs a form, do they require a commissioner to verify that the the information's correct? Is a commissioner required on everything that we do? Or is this sort of an outlier where we require a commissioner on this form, but counties and townships don't require it on their forms?
Good.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have only ever known that applications are commissioned. All planning act applications are commissioned. I'd have to check the act to see if there's wording in there that requires the commissioning, but I suspect there is, considering I've seen multiple application forms from various municipalities and they're all required to be commissioned. So I'm going to assume that that's a process maybe in one of the regulations that requires commissioning for all
All
applications.
right. Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's right, Nancy, through the Planning Act for Ontario or something. One of those acts calls for that to be commissioned. A commissioner's help or to delegate them and approve them.
Which has been tricky because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to commission here. So people need to seek out or have sought alternative places to get applications commissioned, such as some of the local municipalities will still commission and lawyers' offices will commission.
Post office.
Okay, going back to our Appendix B.
Yes, please.
So then the section 4 is principal residence of the owner purchasing farmers. So again, identify the location of the owner's purchasing farmer's principal residence. And does the owner purchasing farmer own or rent their principal residence? Does the owner purchasing farmer own any other dwellings? If yes, identify these locations.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Nancy. We're getting near the time for our first application. And the next was inquiries from Land Division Committee members. Could we move that to at the end of the meeting when we have a discussion on validation of title?
Yep, agreed.
All agreed?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the time is 9:42, so you have, I believe, 3 minutes till the first item. So I don't know if there's anything quick maybe that you would like to discuss.
If there's any quick items on inquiries from the members?
No.
No member has any inquiries?
Nope.
Okay. So we've
Okay.
got to go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, we still have 3 minutes till the first item, so we have to wait until that occurs.
Yes.
Nancy, Mr. Chairman, I've got to sign out and sign back in. I've got 2 other Zoom meetings going on in this house and the bandwidth is a bit tricky. So I've got to finagle a few things around. So I should be on in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But, you haven't lost me for good yet.
Oh, and do you need to know if our signs were all up?
That's what I was just going to ask. Are all the signs and identification signs up?
Yes.
Cell phones were,
What was it? Who said?
cell phone signs were up.
Okay, thanks, John.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure when all of you attend your sites to make sure the signs are correct and to look at the site. Also let us know if you see any issues with the signs themselves. I know that there's been issues sometimes with wind or even vandalism. Also, sometimes they may be obscured based on certain things like grasses or trees or things like that. So if that's the case, let us know as soon as possible so we can contact the applicant to ensure that the signs are up appropriately. And if that they're not obscured by anything, that they're clear from the road, that kind of thing.
What if one's clear and the other isn't? Like, I know sometimes they're down in the ditch and you really have to get out and find them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think in those circumstances, they shouldn't be in the ditch. They should be on the property, clearly visible from the road. So if in those circumstances, let us know so we can let the applicant know. I mean, in this particular case, it seems like at least one was seen or was able to be seen, which is great. But otherwise, I think we should make sure that they're both able to be seen from the road.
And definitely the municipalities prefer them to be on the property line and not on, because in the wintertime, they're out there plowing snow and it knocks them right over. Where if they're back sometimes at the property line, and you can put, if there's a fence post there, I have a lot of them now that are putting them on old steel fence posts, just drive one in the ground and attach it, and it's there.
Mhm.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a quick note. I did have a problem with the signs at the Vienna ones, and Don was a great help in getting in touch with the individual. He'd only put up 5 of the 8 signs that were required, so the lots weren't properly defined. And but she got in touch with them. It was changed immediately, and they're all in good shape.
Okay,
Ian, I noted it is 9:45.
okay. We'll now proceed with application number E 2921.
We got
Take
the-
notice. Take notice that an application has been made by David and Mary Harder, Wayne Jolly.
Ian?
Yes,
Excuse me.
Sorry,
It's-
we're doing the deferred item first, E27-21.
Yes.
oh, sorry.
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 It's okay.
Sorry. We're doing application E2721, deferred application for James Simpson, 29420 Thames View Line, municipality at Dutton Dunwich. And it was deferred at the last meeting.
That's, yes, so if,
Any
Mr.
agents?
Chair, I can give an update if you'd like on this application.
I'll just ask Nancy if there's anybody on Zoom.
Yes, good day, Chair. You have Joe Hens, agent for the applicant. I believe the applicant, James Stewart Simpson, is also on the call.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Simpson? Is Mr. Simpson on?
We are here, yes.
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, proceed, Nancy.
Okay, so I can give a verbal update based on discussions I've had with the staff from Dutton Dunwich. They instructed their staff to provide a revised report, which will be going to their council tonight. So unfortunately, the timing didn't work out. So at this time, we don't have any additional information on any change that Dutton Dunwich may be proposing for their recommendation. Based on that, I would recommend that we defer this, unfortunately, again, to the June meeting, which would be June 23rd, I believe. So it'll be June 23rd.
23rd.
And if committee is satisfied with that, then we can also let the applicant know as well. And hopefully by then we will have information or a revised decision from Dutton Dunwich on this.
Mr. Hens, Joe Hens, do you have any comments just to bring us up to date what you have found out?
No, nothing further. We talked about the process before with the staff and planner at the municipality. So we understand that the municipality must approve it first, and then it'll be brought back before the Land Division Committee at the next meeting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hens. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, this is going to be brought back in the June meeting for
Yeah.
sure, or regardless, or what?
My understanding it is to Dunwich is sending a comment back, and it's to come back at they're going to request that it comes back at the next meeting.
Okay, because I just don't want
Would
this
you
to get left.
understand, Joe? That's your
Yes,
understanding.
Mr. Chair, that is my understanding.
Any other comments?
No, that's good. I just don't want this to get left to go on and on and on forever. If it's going to come back, it needs to come back.
Yeah,
Well, it needs to come back regardless.
And I think Nancy has asked that we get something back. And I understand there's something supposed to be sent back tomorrow. Is that right, Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's my understanding as well. It'll likely be sent in by Friday would be my guess. But unfortunately, it's just the timing didn't quite work out when it came to the committee meetings. We had anticipated there'd be something additional after the May 12th meeting, but just from their own process purposes for Dutton Dunwich, I think they were required to bring back a staff report, so.
Does the members of the committee agree for deferral till the next meeting? We should have,
Fine.
we should have a mover and a seconder, please.
I'll move.
I'll second it.
Moved by John Selden, seconded by Doug Aldred. Would you call the vote, please?
Yeah, call the vote, or are you doing it?
You call for it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yeah.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes.
Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, we'll proceed now with application E 2921.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is 9:51, and so therefore we have 4 minutes until the next item. Unfortunately, we scheduled it at 9:55, thinking that we would have needed more time for the other items, so we'll have to wait a few minutes.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Would you like to do the comments? Everything but our plan and comment?
You can do them all, actually, including the planning, and just mention the conditions. Okay. And then if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Feel free to interrupt me.
Same.
And it's 9:55 in Aylmer.
Yeah, it's 9:55. Okay, Nancy?
Sure.
Okay, we'll deal with application number, excuse me, E 2921. Take notice that an application has been made by David and Mary Harder, Wayne Jolly, 6791 Richmond Road, Aylmer, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act as amended to sever lands municipally known as 6791, excuse me, Richmond Road, Township of Malahide. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 25 meters, 82.02 feet along Richmond Road by a depth of 67.87 meters, 222.67 feet, and an area of 0.17 hectares, 0.42 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 0.20 hectares, 0.49 acres, proposed to remain in residential use. Is there any applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application? Please introduce yourselves to the committee.
Good morning. It's Dave Rowe. I'm the agent for the applicant.
Okay, Nancy, could you go ahead, please?
Will be Ashlyne, actually.
Morning there, okay?
Okay, Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Malahide Township Council has no objections subject to the following conditions: that the applicant initiates and assume, if required, all engineering and construction costs associated with the construction of a new municipal drain or relocation of municipal drain to be commenced in accordance with the Drainage Act, RSO 1990. All costs are to be paid in full to the township prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. The lot grading plan is required as a condition of severance. It should be done in conjunction with the new municipal drain or relocation of municipal drain. That all outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the chief building official prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. That the applicants initiate and assume all planning costs associated with the required minor variance application to address the undersized lot area of the severed parcel, with such costs to be paid in full to the township, and that the required process be successfully completed prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. Confirmation that a private sewage system is confined entirely within the boundaries of the retained parcel. That system shall be in conformance with all required setbacks from lot lines prior to the condition being fulfilled. The owner has the necessary review and lot assessment conducted to ensure that it is suitable for the installation of a sewage disposal system and payment of necessary fees per lot. That the necessary deeds, transfers, and charges for certificate and or instruments necessary for registration be submitted in triplicate prior to the certification of which are to be fully executed. That all applicable property taxes, municipal fees, and charges be paid to the township. That an electronic version of the reference plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. That the applicant is responsible to apply and pay all fees to the township with respect to civic addressing numbers / signage for severed and retained portions of the property. And finally, that the portions of the existing gravel driveway area, which encroach onto the newly created parcel to be severed, be replaced with topsoil and grass and be set back on the retained parcel by a minimum of 1 meter in accordance with the Malahide zoning bylaw.
Any comments, Nancy?
Good.
Additionally, we have heard from county engineering and they have provided the following. Direct connection to a legal outlet for the severed lot is required if an existing connection is unavailable to the satisfaction of the county engineer. All costs to be borne by the owner. Discharge of water to the county road allowance is prohibited. Additionally, that if necessary, an entrance permit be obtained from Elgin County for the entrance to the severed parcel. Again, all costs associated with this borne by the owner. And finally, the grading plan is required for the severed lot. Elgin County Planning has also taken a look at this application and is of the opinion it is acceptable from a planning perspective. and recommends approval subject to the following conditions: a digital copy of the draft plan and final deposited reference plan be provided to the County of Elgin. Solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of registered deed for the severed parcel once completed. The engineering comments that were said previously, as well as the comments included from the Township of Malahide.
Any other comments? Mr. Rowe?
No, no, that's fine. I understand. I've reviewed the comments and the conditions, and they're acceptable. Thank you.
Any comments from the land division members?
Mr. Chairman, Dennis here.
Yes.
Where is the existing septic bed? Is it on the retained or on the severed portion, or to be severed portion?
My recollection is that that it's on the severed. It's on the portion where the building is. That was my recollection.
So it's going to be, it's in the retained portion.
Yes, I guess that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at the sketch that was submitted originally, and it doesn't show that. It shows a well immediately to the north of that existing building, but it doesn't have the septic system anywhere. And my reason for asking that was not knowing where it is. If it's affected by the severance, if the septic system is in non-compliance.
Well, it would have to be brought into compliance. That's the condition actually of Malahide's.
For the severed parcel, but I'm talking about the retained parcel
Well,
now.
they look at both, actually.
Yeah, and I'm looking at both as well.
Yeah.
So my question is that if it's impacted, I don't know if it's the building inspector's job, but that could be an uninhabitable building now, that old meeting hall, if the septic system is in some way not up to code as a result of the severance. So I'm just trying to track that down. I'm just either somebody has to inspect that and make sure that the building is still up to code and can be used, or it's not up to code and cannot be used.
Well, they would need a change. My understanding is it is inhabited, but they would need a change of use permit. And if you'd like, we can add a condition that the both the severed and retained lots must meet the code with respect to the septic system.
Through Mr. Chair, I would like to point out that I think as part of the conditions from Malahide, let me just double check here. There is a condition with respect to an installation of appropriate services, I believe. I'll just have to double check.
Yep.
That's my understanding too.
Yeah,
Yes.
mine as well.
Sorry, so they have both water and sewer connections in that hamlet?
Yeah. Yep. Let me just double check.
I didn't think they had municipal sewer.
No, they don't have municipal
They
sewer.
don't, they have septic systems.
Yes. So that's the municipal drain enforcement. Confirmation that under 4, confirmation that a private sewage system is confined entirely within the boundaries of the retained parcel. That system shall be in conformance with all required setbacks from lot lines prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. And that the owner has, 5, the owner has the necessary review and lot assessment conducted to ensure that it is suitable for the installation of a sewage disposal system and payment of necessary fees per lot. So I think both of those conditions would cover off on the requirements to ensure that the private sewage system is entirely contained on the retained lot, and that the proper installation is done for any new systems.
You see, Mr. Chairman, this is where, when we go back to the sketch that was supplied to us by Husted, they showed the well, but they didn't show the existing septic system. And to me, that's a mistake done by the surveyor. I think that we need to know where the septic systems are, and they're out there, they're doing this, or they're testing stuff. I don't understand why that wasn't included on the sketch, but I'd certainly like staff to ensure that and I see no reason why it shouldn't be included in all future sketches so that we understand what's going on the land.
One through to you, Nancy. Is it not the responsibility of water testing and the septic system part of the municipality before we get sent to us, that they have to have that all looked up and agree with it, since it's their responsibility if there's a problem with that septic system?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we rely on our the local municipalities to provide the conditions with respect to septic or well or both, depending on the system. Because it is obviously any requirements for installation or review is really coming out of the local municipality. Secondly, they did provide the septic review, and as part of the application form, it was in the agenda package that we would have sent out a few weeks ago. But certainly confirmation of the location of that, as I'm looking at the mapping and it's not clear where that existing septic is, would have been helpful, I think, for the submission. So that is part of their condition, though, as part of the local municipality. If there's an issue with the location of it, then certainly the applicant may be required to come back, for instance, and receive an easement, or they may be required to install a new system depending on the requirements of the local municipality.
Any further comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a small point, but well, not a small point, but I think this issue is really important. I'm glad Dennis brought it up. But as far as I may be mistaken, but I think what was submitted with the application on the septic system was dated 2006. So that clearly is not. If the municipality's making any decisions, I wouldn't guess that they would be happy with something that old. But maybe Mr. Rowe, maybe I'm mistaken. David, am I right or wrong, or should that be a more recent?
Well, I think that was the actual copy of the permit when it was installed in the first place.
Well, anyway, I would anticipate a more recent investigation or a more recent review, but.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. I agree.
Any
Also,
further? Go ahead.
yeah, quickly, I think there's a typo error on the minor variance bylaw sought as a 1761 versus 176.1 square meters.
What
Through you,
page?
Mr. Chair, sorry, John, where are you seeing that?
What page?
I'm sorry, I didn't note the page. I beg your pardon. The minor variance bylaw sought for 5 square meters, an area versus 176.1 square meters. There was just a decimal missing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, John, is that on our application? Is that on our notice?
I believe so. It's through no, not in the agenda package, in the application. I beg your pardon, Nancy.
Okay. Is there any issue with the notice of application?
I don't have that in front of me.
Any other comments? Did you find it, Nancy, where it was, what they were?
No, I can't find that. So I'm not sure. Unless it's part of the application form, I'm going to assume that, sorry, unless it was actually transferred to the notice of application. But I don't think it was. I think that's the correct dimensions that I can see. So.
Okay,
I summarize up based on the application first, and then I do a second summary based on the agenda package. And my notes are, my note 1D was minor applications, bylaw sought, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I picked it up, but I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. And anyway, so it wasn't in the agenda package, Nancy. It was in the application somewhere, but not in that first page that's up on the screen now, but must have been further on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to make a big deal about it. I just thought I'd mention it.
Any other comments on this application? Any
Looking
comments?
for a motion?
Yes, I'm ready for a motion.
Andrews moves.
Moved by John Andrews, seconder,
O'Grady, second.
O'Grady. Call the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes,
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes,
John Selden,
Yes,
Jack Van Castren,
Yes,
and Duke Aldred. Duke Aldred,
are you there, Duke?
I am back now and my answer is yes.
all right. Thank you very much. The vote carries 7-0.
Okay, so the decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you'd like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at annpasto@algon.ca. So we can proceed with our next application, which is application number E3021. Take notice that an application has been made by 2245-885 Ontario Incorporated, 10401 Westminster Drive, London, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended, to sever lands municipally known as 13662 Ruth Road, Township of Southwold. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 45.8 meters, 150.26 feet along Routh Road by a depth of 53.85 meters, 176.67 feet, and an area of 0.25 hectares, 0.62 acres, containing an existing house for non-farm residential use. The owners are retaining 99.8 hectares, 246.61 acres, proposed to remain in agricultural use. Applicants or agents for this are interested parties who wish to speak to this application. Please introduce themselves to the committee.
Hello, it's Helen Button here from Gunn and Associates. I'm the solicitor for the applicants.
Thank you. Ashlyne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the lower municipality has reviewed this application and recommends approval subject to the following conditions: that the applicant meet all the requirements, financial and otherwise, of the municipality to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality; that the applicant provides a description of the lands to be severed, which can be registered in the land registry office to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality; that the applicant's solicitor provides an undertaking to the municipality to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed parcel once the transaction has occurred to the municipality. The applicant successfully applied to the municipality for a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the retained and severed parcel, and having such rezoning to the satisfaction, and having such rezoning of the zoning bylaw come into full force and effect pursuant to the Planning Act to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality. That the applicant remove the existing septic system and install a new septic system on the severed parcel. That the applicant obtain a change of use permit for the existing barns that had the capability of housing livestock to ensure all capability of housing said livestock has been removed. That the applicant have a qualified contractor install a new water well and water line on the proposed severed parcel to supply water to the existing dwelling and decommission, the existing water well and water lines, or relocate the existing water line to service the proposed retained parcel. That the applicant have a qualified contractor relocate the existing hydro service supplying the existing dwelling from the proposed retained parcel to the proposed severed parcel at their sole cost and expense to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality. That the applicant have a drainage reapportionment completed pursuant to the Drainage Act to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality. The applicant provide a mutual drain agreement pursuant to the Drainage Act. That prior to final approval of the county is advised in writing by the municipality how all the above noted conditions have been satisfied. That all conditions noted above shall be fulfilled within 1 year of notice of the decision, so that the County of Elgin is authorized to issue the certificate of consent pursuant to the Planning Act.
Any comments from our agent, please?
Nothing really. We've looked at the recommendations from council. I think the main point of discussion was on the well. Initially, there was a proposal to do an easement because there is a well located beyond the boundary of the proposed severed lot. But after some discussions, the applicants have proposed instead installing a new well for the dwelling on the proposed severed lot. So, and that met with agreement with the planner of the council, and there was some discussion about that with Nancy Pisato as well, and I think that everyone is agreed to do that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comments from any members of the land division?
If I may, Ian, we haven't completed the municipalities and the county's comments as of yet, so we'll get Ashlyne to finish those.
Okay.
So we also received comments. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we also received some comments from Lower Thames Conservation Authority. They have no objections. Additionally, County Engineering Services looked at this application and has indicated that the county has no concerns regarding engineering. Furthermore, the Planning Department has looked at this application. It is consistent with the provincial policy statement and complies with the County of Elgin official plan. And in addition to the conditions listed earlier, 2 additional conditions are imposed on this. A digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan be provided to the County of Elgin, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed parcel once completed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there comments from the county, Nancy or Ashley?
That concludes the comments. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the members?
Dennis here. I'll support the application, but it's I don't know, it just looks like in the future conflict, you've got a house surrounded by active barns. I understand they're not going to have livestock in them, but because they're not being torn down, there's going to be a lot of heavy machinery, residential use. Not very compatible land uses side by side, but I guess if everybody's going into it with their eyes open, then I'll support it.
Any other comments?
I'll move it, Andrew.
Moved by Andrews.
I'll
Second.
second.
Second by Duke. No more comments? I'll ask Ashlyne to call the vote, or Dawn, whoever. Sorry, go ahead. Call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes.
and Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of the decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at annpasto@algon.ca. We'll proceed now with the next one. It's for 1015. Take notice that application number E3121. Take notice that an application has been made by Graham and Janet Sarlovos, 48813 Glencolin Line, Elmer, Ontario, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended, to sever lands municipally known as 49145 Glencolin Line, Township of Malahide. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 71.64 meters, 235.04 feet along Glencolin Line by a depth of 86.87 meters, 285.01 feet, and an area of 0.62 hectares, 1.53 acres, containing an existing house and a shed, proposed to be residential use. The owners are retaining 12.71 hectares, 31.41 acres, proposed to remain in agricultural use. Applicants or agents for an interested party who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Oh, this is Nathan Bookma. I'm the agent for the applicant.
Thank you. Ashlyne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the county received comments from a few different people and agencies. One of these agencies was the Malahide Township Council, and they support this application subject to the following conditions: that the applicant initiates and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule in accordance with the Drainage Act, with a deposit to be paid in full to the township prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. If the deposit does not cover the costs of the revised assessment schedule, the applicant will be billed for any additional costs incurred. All entrance permits are required from the appropriate road authority as per the entrance control policy. All outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the chief building official. The applicants initiate and assume all planning costs associated with the required zoning amendment, with such cost to be paid in full to the township, and that the required process be successfully completed prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. Confirmation that private sewage system be confined entirely within the boundaries of the newly created parcel. That system be in conformance with all required setbacks from lot lines prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. all applicable property taxes, municipal fees, and charges to be paid to the township prior to the stamping of the deeds. An electronic version of the reference plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the township, and that the applicant is responsible to apply and pay all fees to the township with respect to civic addressing, numbers, and signage for the severed and retained portions of the property.
Comments further? Ashley?
Further comments, I was just finding them. Additionally, we received comments back from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority. They have no concerns with this application. And our county engineering department has indicated that this is not on a county road and has no concerns. Additionally, county planning has taken a look at this application, and it is in conformance with both the provincial policy statement and the County of Elgin official plan. Included in our conditions are our two standard conditions, which is a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan to be provided, and solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of registered deed for the severed parcel once completed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any comments from the agent?
No, we reviewed the information that's presented to us and everything seems to be in order.
Thank you. Any comment from members of the land division?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
through you, if I just want to bring this up because of at our meeting, at the last meeting in April, the issue of the retained land in E2221 was brought up by one of our colleagues, by Dennis, in fact, about being too small. And this is almost a repeat in E3121, that the retained, again, is a very small area compared to the minimum requirement. Is this once again just one of those things we just accept and move on, or is there something that needs to be addressed here on a more general basis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer that. So the Malahide Township's official plan does not have a minimum with respect to surplus farm dwellings. The County of Elgin official plan does not have criteria on the minimums with respect to surplus farm dwellings and the retained parcels. So really, we're just relying on whether there is an amount of retained lands that makes sense to be consolidated with other farmlands. And in this particular case, it is 12 hectares, which is certainly smaller than a lot of the other farms we see, but it's not out of step with any of the policies because, like I said, there is no actual amount listed in either official plans.
Thank you.
any further comments?
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Moved by Rosemary, seconder,
I'll second it, Jack.
seconded by Jack Van Casteren. Call for the vote.
John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes,
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes,
Jack Van Casteren,
Yes.
and Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
thank you. The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@elgin.ca.
Could I just make one comment there, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Doug.
I periodically lose connection, so if I don't respond, it's because you people have kicked me out of the party for a minute.
Yeah.
As long as you don't take it personally.
Well, I understand, Doug.
Can we make that
I've
long?
not gone long enough that you can talk much about me because I'm back pretty quick usually.
Oh, Doug, you've got such great system up there in West Elgin.
Well, I'm supposed to be on Starlink now. It's supposed to be goof proof, but there's still a few goofs in it.
It's a seamless transition.
The next application. Go ahead, Nancy.
Sorry, I just wanted to interject before we started these. So for the next application, you indicated that the last meeting that we had, that we wanted to consolidate ones that were with respect to one application. So this is one property. So we've done our best to consolidate the 4 applications into one time slot. So I'm assuming that we'll have to read off each of the notices for each of the parcels, but we can treat them all as one and potentially also make recommendation. I'm not sure if we need to do individual recommendations or not, but I leave that to you as the chair to direct. Okay, thanks.
Okay, now one comment on E33-21. One of the measurements says 22 meters and in brackets it says 2.17 feet.
Yes,
That's not,
It should be 72.17.
72.
Actually,
Yes.
it's on 2 of the applications, the same as.
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay, we'll make an amendment to that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just get my. So we'll read each one, just what they're doing for each lot. And then we'll deal with them. Is that what you're planning, Nancy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That's apparently how it's been done in the past. So I'm going to assume that's how we would like to do this application.
Okay. This application is first of all, well, I'll go through this and then I'll ask for the agent. Take notice, this application E3221. Take notice that an application is made by Jesse Froese, 55903 Maple Grove Line, Eden, Ontario. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 23.19 meters, 76.08 feet along Plank Road by a depth of 60 meters, 196.85 feet, and an area of 0.14 hectares, which is 0.35 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 7.41 hectares, 18.31 acres to proposed to remain in agricultural use. And I'll go to E3321. So application number E33-21. Take notice that an application is made by Jesse Froese, 59903 Maple Grove Line, Eden, Ontario. The applicant proposes to sever a parcel with a frontage of 22 meters, 72.17 feet along Plank Road by a depth of 60 meters, 196.85 feet, and an area of 0.13 hectares, 0.32 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 7.28 hectares, 18.0 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. Now I'll go to E3421. My fingers can't move fast enough. E3421. Take notice an application was made by Jesse Froese, 55903 Maple Grove Line, Eden, Ontario. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 22 meters, 72.17 feet along Plank Road by a depth of 60 meters, 196.85 feet, and an area of 0.13 hectares, 0.32 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 7.14 acres, 17.64 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. And now we'll go to 3521. Application number E3521. Take notice that an application has been made by Jesse Froze, 55903 Maple Grove Line, Eden, Ontario, for consent to purchase pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 25.43 meters, 83.43 feet along Plank Road by a depth of 60 meters, 196.85 feet, and an area of 0.15 hectares, 0.37 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 6.99 hectares, 17.27 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. Any applicants or agent and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Good morning. It's Andrew Gildesi here of CJDL Consulting Engineers, and I am the agent for the applicant.
And good morning there. My name is Jesse Froze. I'm the applicant, and just nice to meet you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the committee. I'll be here if you have any questions.
Okay. I'll now ask
Good morning.
Ashlyne.
Jeff and Laura Court. We are the property owners to the south of the retained parcel land.
Okay. Thank you. I'll now ask Ashlyne to read the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application was reviewed by the municipality. They have provided the following conditions as a provided the following conditions for this consent, installation of individual private wells with water quantity and water quality reports for bacteria and nitrates content meeting the provincial standards for residential use as a matter of public health and safety. Engineer designed overall lot grading / drainage plan showing direct connection to the existing municipal drain. Rezoning of the severed lands to remove the holding H2 zone provision by entering into a subdivision agreement with the municipality. Digital copy of the registered plan of survey. Cash in lieu of parkland dedication fee for each of the 4 created lots. Purchase civic number signs for each of the 4 lots created, and planning report fee payable to the municipality. I should also note that those conditions are for all 4 of those applications. Furthermore, all the other comments received would also be applicable to all 4 of the applications. We also received comments from county engineering regarding these applications. The county engineer notes that lands for road widening is required and that the owner dedicate lands along the frontage of the severed and retained lots up to 18 meters from the center line of construction of Plank Road, County Road 19, to the County of Elgin for the purpose of road widening if the right-of-way is not already to that width. All costs to be borne by the owner. Direct connection to a legal outlet for the severed lot is required. If an existing connection is unavailable to the satisfaction of the county engineer, all costs to be borne by the owner. Discharge of water to the county road allowance is prohibited. That if necessary, an entrance permit be obtained from Elgin County for the entrance to the severed and retained parcels. Again, all costs associated with this borne by the owner, and that a lot grading plan is required for the severed lot. Furthermore, Elgin County Planning has reviewed all of these applications as well and offers the following comments. That the applicant shall provide to the Land Division Committee a signed acknowledgement and undertaking confirming that the Applicant has been advised the Ontario Building Code Act requires confirmation of servicing, including an individual on-site potable water supply and/or an individual on-site sewage system prior to the issuance of a building permit. That the applicant has made the necessary inquiries of the municipality to determine the work necessary in order to confirm that the site conditions are suitable for the long-term provision of such services with no negative impact. And that the applicant undertakes to advise any further purchaser of the above acknowledgement and the results of such inquiries. Additionally, that the municipality confirms there is sufficient reserve sewage treatment capacity within the municipal sewage treatment system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ashlyne. Any comments from the agent?
No comments at this time, other than we support the report that's been presented to the committee and are here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Any comments from the Corks?
Yes, we had a couple points or questions that we wanted to address. First of all, regarding the increase in development along Plank Road, we're putting a request in that the speed zone limit be extended out to the extent of development for the hamlet of Eden to be in agreement with the boundaries of that development as per Schedule D of the zoning bylaw. Right now, the 50 zone commences approximately at application E3321. And since us living here in since 2005, we've had a vehicle on its roof in our front yard. We've had vehicles passing stopped school buses with flashing signs. And this is one of few passing zones along this stretch of roadway. And we just feel that with the increased development between us and the hamlet, that it would be of benefit to users of the road that the speed limits be reduced to the extent of the development. Any comments before I move on?
Nancy, how is this dealt with? This is a county road.
That's correct. So through you, Mr. Chair, we would need to bring this up with the county engineer to see if there's the ability to change the speed limits at this location. So it's something we can follow up with the county engineer.
Okay, that's what I would like to personally see that, but go ahead with your rest of your comments, Mr. Cork.
And I just would like to add that we would, the developer and myself as the agent would support that move as well.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any further comments, Mr. Cork?
I guess I should have started off by suggesting that we are in favor of development. We feel that it'll increase the value of the housing stock in the area and be good for the community. But one of our primary concerns in this area is the quantity and quality of water from the aquifer that we all draw from. It's part of the application for consent that was submitted to the municipality. There was previously 2 lots that were severed off of the original parcel of land that was under the H2 hold, and I don't see that presented in the reporting, but we are now severing, or there's consideration to sever an additional 4 lots, which currently would make it a parcel of 5 lots, and under the OPA that doesn't qualify as a major development. But we see currently that there is land surveying being done across the road, and I guess our request is that a hydrogeological study be done so that the continued development both in this area of Eden as well as around the other areas doesn't negatively impact the ability of all of our wells to produce the required water for using the properties. So that was my second request, that a hydro-G study be done in advance of granting application for consent. But I don't know if that's unreasonable. As I said, we support the development, but the development isn't good for us or anybody. In fact, if we don't have drinking water or potable water.
Does the agent have any comments?
We are in the process of completing that hydrogeological study through consultation with the municipality of Bayham. It will be a comprehensive study that looks at the larger scope of the entire community and the proposed developments that are again contemplated throughout the community of Eden. We are waiting for some feedback, more or less, basically from the municipality of Bayham and the county of Elgin on direction on how that study should be, terms of reference of that study. And then once that's finalized, that study will proceed, and that will be part of the information we provide back to both the county of Elgin and the municipality of Bayham about the potability and suitability of water supply for these proposed services.
Okay, any comments from members of the Land Division Committee?
Mr. Chairman, Dennis here. Just to the agent, Mr. Gavese, perhaps you could summarize some of the things that MOE requires in your Hydro-G study and share that with the landowner so he's aware of all the different things, because these reports are quite large and quite extensive. But if you've never been involved with them, you don't know all you've got to do. So maybe give something or a reference or a website that look up what is required when you do a Hydro-G study of this magnitude might help put that landowner's mind at ease.
Any further comments from any other members of the Land Division? Any comments, Nancy, as planning manager of planning?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we didn't add a condition in with respect to the hydrogeological assessment as a requirement of the conditions of severance because it was considered smaller scale. But I defer to the committee if they think it's necessary to add a condition in then that requires that the hydrogeological assessment be completed prior to final approval for these severances. Like I said, 4 lots generally is not usually a concern, but certainly for larger developments, there would need to be some form of study done to ensure that there's adequate water as well as the quality and quantity is adequate. So at this time, we're not recommending that condition, but the committee should be aware of that if they do feel the need to add it.
Any other comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, again, Dennis here, I wouldn't make that a condition.
Can't hear you, Dennis.
If they don't have already something on the website about this study. Hang on. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm on. We got a bad connection. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest not a condition, but suggest to the township that they should put something on their webpage, just saying what's going on with the Hydro-G study to keep the landowners informed so they can follow along.
Any other members have anything to say?
Yeah, Jack here.
Yes, Jack.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I agree with Dennis. I wouldn't want to make it a condition of these severance applications consent. But I do recognize that people in the community are concerned and that they better bring their concerns to Bayham Township before any future development occurs, that they get a good handle on this.
Yes, I personally agree and just as the chairman, I'm saying that I think the Bayham Township should be aware of this situation, and they must be. Any further comments?
Excuse me, it's John Selden, Mr. Chair.
Yes, John.
May I ask of the agent or Mr. Galvezi, apparently you're already going ahead with your geological study. Is this in concert with Bayham? Was this initiated independently? And are you concerned about the situation for water? And is that why you're going ahead with this voluntarily?
We are working with Municipality BAM staff closely on developing the terms of reference for the comprehensive hydro-G study. There are other proposed developments, not by this developer, in the community of Eden at this time. So there are other things in motion that is kind of prompting this to happen. So we've in the past, we have done hydrogeological studies for small scale developments like this, and even slightly larger scale developments. We are familiar with the process that needs to be done. What BAM and Nancy are asking for in this case is a little more comprehensive, a little more wider scale. So we do need some clarity on what the terms of reference and scope of that hydro-G study will be for the community of Eden. Right now, I don't have any particular concerns. Part of the hydro-G has happened on another site in Eden. The results were good, but it looked at that property as a standalone, not as a community-wide hydro-G. So the summary of that report was very positive. So I don't have any concerns at this time, but the scope and the community-wide may have some different impacts on what the findings are.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from members?
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up, Mr. Chair. Listen, just as a follow-up to your comments, which I really appreciate, I just worry that it's a case of putting the cart before the horse. I just hate to see those 4 lots go in, get them developed, and then the hydrogeological studies show there's a problem.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, it's Jeff Cork. I do have one more comment, and it leads further to the last speaker's comment. The layout of the severances is leaving vacant land between 33 and 34, between 34 and the pumping station. And I'm not understanding if that retained parcel of land is meant for agricultural use. What is the advantage of leaving the vacant land? It is following the unapproved draft plan of subdivision that was submitted as part of the application as being 2 future lots for development. But if the hydro-G study doesn't complement the development, now we have vacant land between those lots that I would argue is difficult to leave for agricultural use. So to the past speaker's comments about putting the cart before the horse, I'm wondering what is the intent of, I understand there's a vacant parcel also between 35 and an existing home, which again, in accordance with the draft plan of subdivision that's not approved, is for a future roadway. So that made sense. I just wondered if someone could comment the purpose of the vacant parcels between 33, 34, and between 34 and the pumping station.
If I may, Jesse Froze here. I'm the applicant. So the retained parcels are there because the 4 lots that we are submitting are previously already serviced. There's actually sewer stubs on this. So these are previously serviced lots. They're in the correctly zoned area and they're on a major road with frontage. And this is also one of the reasons that we left those spaces, is because we're just going to do the ones right now that are serviced. They're already ready. They're zoned for it. And then in regards to the hydro-G study, this is a smaller scale development. There's not really a precedent for doing a hydro-G study for a small scale development like this. If we were to do future development, of course, we would do something like that. And as of now, we're already starting to do a bit of a settlement capability study for the town of Eden. just to see what the potential impact is and the potential water situation in all of Eden. But for these four, it's a small scale development. And I think talking with Hayden and all the other people that I've discussed, all the other hydro G studies in the area have come back very positive. There's a lot of water. I just don't really think there's an area of concern, seeing that it is only 4 lots right now.
Thank you. Any further comments, Nancy? Any comments, Nancy?
I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, or we'll have a motion?
Just one last comment, Mr. Chair. Is it suggested then that the lots between 33 and 34 and 34 in the pumping station do not have sanitary laterals to them right now?
That's correct. The lot layout was based on the current existing services. And that's basically why the lots that were chosen to be severed were already serviced.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Dennis.
Andrews, move.
Got a comment, Dennis?
I was going to suggest a resolution. Somebody beat me to the mover, but would the resolution state that we approve the severance applications for E32 through E35 and do it all as one motion? I understand that we would have to publish each of the data separately, but can we have one motion approving all 4?
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's what I had anticipated you would be doing as a result of this, that we would pass one motion for all of the applications.
Okay. Members of the committee agree?
Oh, just a second.
Yeah, I don't think.
Ashlyne indicated that she doesn't think she can do that, so therefore I think we have to pass 4 individual motions.
I am just going to say that because they're all some of them are a little different size.
Yeah. Okay. So you'll need to do 4 then.
Yes. So we'll look at, first of all, we'll look at E3221. We need a motion for a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Moved by Rosemary, second.
O'Grady.
Second by Dennis O'Grady. Call the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yep.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes.
Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, now we'll deal with E33-21. Can we have a mover and a seconder, please?
Andrews.
Andrews and Van Kasteren.
Yep.
Call the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes.
and Doug Aldred.
Yes.
Great, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, now Don will do E3421. We need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move Aldred.
Moved by Aldred, seconder.
Van Kasteren.
Thank you. Proceed with the vote, please.
John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes.
Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
Now we'll ask for mover and seconder for E 35-21.
O'Grady, move.
Moved by O'Grady,
I'll second.
second by Rosemary. Proceed with the vote, please.
John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes.
and Doug Aldred.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. So the decision rendered today for these applications will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. Thank you. Now we have application.
There is Mr. Estes here. Okay, come on, we're running a little bit late. Sorry about that.
Application number E 36-21.
And if you'd like to stand at the podium, they can see you on camera.
Take notice that an application has been made by Benjamin, John, and Teresa Vanderveen, 5934 Richmond Road, Port Burwell, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 84.88 meters, 278.47 feet along Richmond Road by a depth of 46.1 meters, 151.41 feet, and an area of 0.4006 hectares, 0.99 acres, to be conveyed to 5906 Richmond Road. The owners are retaining 0.9065 hectares, 2.24 acres to remain existing residential use. Ashlyne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is supported by the municipality of Bayham. Excuse me. And they recommend the following conditions. A digital copy of the final survey, a letting report fee payable to the municipality, letter of undertaking from a solicitor/lawyer confirming the severed lands from 5934 Richmond Road will merge on title with the lands at 5906 Richmond Road. Rezoning of the retained lands to a site-specific rural residential zone to recognize residential use in accordance with the official plan and reduced front yard setback. And rezoning of the merged lands, the severed lands, and 5906 Richmond Road lands to a rural residential zone to recognize the residential use in accordance with the official plan. County engineering has indicated they have no concerns with this application. As this application is a lot adjustment, there is no impact to the surrounding agricultural uses and no new lot is being created. County of Elgin Planning is of the opinion the application is acceptable and provides the following additional comments. A digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan be provided to the County of Elgin. Solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed parcel once completed, and that the severed lands are deeded in the same name and interest as the abutting lot at 5906 Richmond Road, and that Section 50 subsection 3 of the Planning Act applies to any future consent affecting the same lands. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and so I apologize. I didn't ask for applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Sorry, someone else speaking.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm Bill Ostrom. I'm buying that piece of land.
Okay,
My name is Ashley Polinsky, and I am the agent for the applicant.
okay, thank you very much. Now we will deal with further in items. Ashlyne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The comments were already reviewed prior to the introduction of the agent and applicant.
Okay, so from the county, there's no,
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was no issues with the application, and we indicated that there are several conditions that were added to, potentially could be added to the decision.
okay, and the agent, have you any comments?
No, I have no additional comments, but I can answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, I'll ask for comments from members of the Land Division Committee.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yes, John?
if I may ask the agent, and also referencing Nancy, this was rather there was a lot of detail in this, and reading it, even though I think both sets of materials were well written, is still a bit confusing. And what is interesting to me is that everything seems to come down to road widening affecting the lots and allowing this to go ahead. Would you expand on that a bit?
Is that to
Through you,
Nancy,
Mr. Chair, I
John?
don't- through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what condition you're referring to. The county engineer did not require a road widening with respect to this.
Well, maybe I'm mistaken. It wasn't a request for road widening, but road widening altered the lots. Therefore, that allowed for that will allow for this to go ahead. Have I got that right? The road widening was done some time ago, which then altered the dimensions of the original lots. And that seems to be integral to this process going ahead. Am I wrong?
That's correct.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the lawyer provided the information that you see within the agenda package.
If I can make comment, so yeah, there was a road widening, sorry, I can't remember the year, a while back and did, and then 2018, there was also a one-time consent. So we are still able to merge the properties together because of all that. I don't know if that quite answers your questions or not.
Well, I just wanted to confirm the fact that the heart of this even being able to go ahead was this road widening some time ago. Is that correct?
It makes it a lot easier to do. There's other ways to do it, but it made it a lot easier that there was a road widening, yes.
Mr. Chairman, just
Go ahead,
question.
Dennis.
Yeah, on the one of the overhead photos, you've got a square calling it a contingency area. What's that all about? Some page.
It's on what, Dennis?
It's
Didn't
it's
hear
on
you,
page
Dennis.
199. It's called a contingency area.
Can't hear you, Dennis.
You're breaking up really bad.
Dennis?
In the middle of the property. There you go. Okay. Is that it, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. You'll have to repeat it, Dennis.
You're breaking up.
Okay, am I clear now, Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Okay. On page 199 of our agenda package, there's an air photo, and there's a square called contingency area, right smack dab in the middle of that. And I'm curious what that's all about. Yeah, that's the one. Right in
Yeah.
the middle? Yeah, contingency area. I'm just curious. Why is that marked on there? Is it just nothing?
Good question.
Good question.
As far as I know, that isn't anything. I don't know what that's referring to.
That's scary from a lawyer, isn't it? All right, we'll ignore that it has absolutely no meaning.
I think that's enough room for another bed though, if it was needed.
Yeah,
Hey,
but
Mr. Chair, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just questioning, I'd like to know why we're moving that over. That lot that's being severed does not have a road access off of Vienna line?
No, it's getting merged with the other property on Richmond, just to make them perfect square properties versus having like an L shaped around the neighboring property.
Yeah, that's the
So
way
like
I
the access
understand
is
it.
off of Richmond into the neighbor's onto the neighbor's property.
Yeah, I agree. That's the way I see it. It's just squaring off the neighbor's property. It's not gonna create a separate lot.
No, it's not creating a new lot.
No, and through you, Mr. Chair, in fact, one of the conditions would be to merge on title, so.
So to merge together. So to merge together.
Yeah, based on everything I see, I don't have a problem moving that this be accepted with the conditions already proposed.
Any further comments?
I'll second the motion. O'Grady?
Moved by Jack Van Castern, seconded by Dennis O'Grady. Don, could you call the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheet. John Andrews,
Yes.
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes,
and Doug Aldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. Thank you.
Okay, sir, so we approved the application with conditions, so you'll receive something in the mail within the next few days.
Okay, thanks very much.
Mr. Oostrom.
Okay, thank you. Now we have comments about validation certificates.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
So
Vince.
we've had a recent inquiry. An applicant wishes to submit an application for a validation of title. And this is a little known provision under the Planning Act. And basically it's different than an actual severance. What it is that and I provided some background on it, but if you look at page 2, a validation of title fixes mistakes in the history of title. So if two properties have merged, a consent would normally be required in order to split them. But if an owner owns land and does not actually have the legal title because it was actually conveyed to them, then the validation can be used to cure the invalid prior transfer. So if a lender has a mortgage that breached the act because the borrower owned abutting land when the mortgage was given, a validation certificate can cure that mortgage and instead make it valid. So it's very much not a normal severance. It's basically recognizing that this had been done, it had been conveyed previously. And normally municipalities don't have the normal severance process when it comes to validation certificates. I did a bit of a review on other surrounding municipalities and what they do for validation of certificates. And for the most part, it's a fee, typically charged the same as a severance fee, but there's no circulation, for instance. And the application would go to the committee if they choose, or it could be delegated to the secretary treasurer for the committee if you so choose as well. And then a decision can be rendered based on that. There would still be consideration based on the Planning Act with respect to the official plan and zoning and those sorts of things. And certainly the municipality would be involved and would also, we would solicit their comments as well. But like I said, it's not a normal Planning Act application, and instead looks to validate what was previously done in contravention of the act, basically. So hypothetically speaking, it was a severance at some point, and someone conveyed a portion of lands that wasn't recognized. It never had the appropriate mortgage on it, I guess you could say. It's a little confusing, and I'm not even 100% sure that I understand it fully, but when I spoke to the lawyer for the county, he indicated that I would need to get clarification from the committee on how to proceed with these types of applications in terms of a process.
Thanks.
Okay, I have one comment, Nancy. If we had a situation over a year ago when two farms got put together, and then they had to go through an application, and we're seeing more of that when a member of a family passes away, but over the years they bought, say, two 100-acre farms and a 50-acre farm. Is this going to help that out, where you can get this straightened out, where it's put together?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, this is a different type of validation. In those instances, there's only one way to correct a merging of properties, which would be, Parcel A, Parcel B, somebody passes away, and then they merge on title because of the name change, and now they're under the same name, for instance. That would still require a severance under the Planning Act because they have legally merged. In this case, this is a little different. It would validate a transfer of a portion of lands to somebody based on a Planning Act breach, from what I understand. So it's a little different with respect to that. And like I said, it actually hardly ever comes up because really, you would have to demonstrate that there has been that breach, and that's difficult to do. So almost 99.9% of the times we're going to be looking at an application for a severance, but in particular instances, sometimes there may need to be this validation sought.
I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Jack.
On your example, given your example, I think if you use that example where two farms were merged together, say one of those farms did have a mortgage on it, and the other parcel was merged together with it, that's where this might come into play. Because the other parcel was free and clear before it got merged together, and now all of a sudden, does the mortgage pertain to that land or not?
Right.
I think that's where this would come into play to say,
right.
no, that property never had a mortgage on it, right?
That's
So,
right.
As far as the process goes, reading through all this information that Nancy provided, I don't think we want to have it anytime that this comes forward that the committee has to rule on it, because we could be delaying a certificate issued for up to 30 days before our next meeting, right? I would suggest, though, that any validation certificate that comes forward, a proposal to have one issued, that it be looked at by county lawyer to make sure that everything's kosher before a certificate is issued.
I'll
That'd be
just
my
make a
recommendation.
comment, Jack. The one that we dealt with, well, it's in a year ago, over a year ago, there was a death, and the farms went together, but there was a mortgage on one farm, and that started the ball rolling. And then it's the same way right now. There's another one in an area that the father passed away, but the son-in-law had a mortgage on the back farm, but it got put all in one name.
Exactly.
But the deeds, when they pay their taxes, they get four tax notices. but at the registry office, it says it's one deed.
Right.
I think
And it
Duke's
wouldn't-
seen that.
Wouldn't that be where this validation certificate might be useful?
Yeah, I don't know. I just see it as an area coming. It might be might work for us, but it's an area that we're gonna get caught in again.
I agree.
You think, Duke?
Oh, I agree with, there's a mortgage. This is probably something that could be used to keep that separate as a separate property.
Yes.
But it's not gonna address the situation we had a year ago.
No.
I
it's
think we
only
really
for that
have to
mortgage.
hope our MPs look at this review of Bill C-181 and
Yes,
see there's a problem there.
That's correct. So that's something that the government is actually looking at with a private members bill, I believe, which is actually looking at the merging that's currently happens because of the Planning Act for properties, the automatic merging, basically. And that's separate of this, which is, like I said, can only be used in certain circumstances where there was a breach in the Planning Act and a mortgage has been issued for lands that were not conveyed. Like I said, circumstances of this happening, from what I understand, or based on the review that I did of that application that was mentioned from last year, that went through as a severance. So I'm assuming then that it was determined that a validation of title was not possible for those lands. So I'm assuming that perhaps they had merged, and that is what occurred. But at this time, we just need a process going forward, basically, to if we do receive these types of applications, we just want to know how to process them. Does committee want to see them? Do they want to make a decision on them? At this time, I would recommend no circulation, because really it's a previously existing, for all intents and purposes, the lot is previously existing. So really you're just there wouldn't be anyone to notify, essentially, but other than the municipality and any potential easements on the property. Anyways, but I'm open to any suggestions from the committee.
any suggestion from the committee?
Well, I kind of have to agree with Jack. There's several situations out there where farmers own farms beside each other in different names, but there's mortgage on one and there's not the other, where it could get rolled together. But I also don't think you want to hold this up, because as Jack stated, there's quite often a fairly short time period in order to get this all figured out and certified. So I think, I don't think it's something the committee needs to be getting information on and have to dwell with and deal with to slow down the process.
I agree. It's a legal process that is basically correcting a wrong.
Yes.
That's happened in the past. So if that's the case, I think county just needs to get legal advice and either issue a certificate to correct that wrong or don't.
Yep. Agree. Any other comments?
Only that I hope we don't get one.
I'm with you, Dennis.
We'll leave it to Nancy and we'll deal with that when it comes up then.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, just want to clarify then that the process will be that we will accept the application. We'll probably look at developing a separate application form for validation of title. As you can see, a lot of these examples that I've provided are much smaller than our application forms, because obviously a lot of information is not necessary. So we might develop our own application form. We'll bring that back to the committee so you guys can take a look at it. And then the fees will be charged same as a severance application. But the committee will not be reviewing these applications. They will be dealt with through the Secretary Treasurer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to add though, Nancy, under the benefit of education, once you develop that new application, I'd like the committee to be made aware of it, but also any that come forth that you have to deal with as staff and as the legal team. I would hope that you would share that with the committee after the fact, that we understand what's going on and why this validation certificate was brought forward and how it was handled.
The rest of the committee agree with that?
Yes, yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Very good. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Any further comments from members of the Land Division Committee on any questions they have of anything?
Mr. Chairman, Dennis here. Oh, sorry, John, you go ahead, John.
No, I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I brought it up with Dennis about remote learning, and we've got that conference coming up in a few weeks. And just if we had a policy, because normally our policy would allow the payment of our per diem if we attend a conference. And I think remote learning is going to be more and more common. So I don't know if Nancy had a chance to look at our policy to see if we had anything on remote learning. And if we don't, then I suggest that maybe we develop one, because it may be possible, or it's probably likely that we're going to have more of these remote learning things. And is it something that we want to compensate the members for? Because if you attended an in-person conference, we've already got a policy for that. But what about if a conference online? We don't have a policy on per diems for if you online. So I'm throwing that out there because I don't think we've got a policy to cover it. And I'd rather we make a decision on, is it a per diem for remote learning or not? Is it the same as an in-person conference or not? I'd rather deal with it than leave it up in the air.
Well, as chairman, I'd like to have Nancy, I think it should be dealt with through the county, because they're the ones that'll be making up policies for all committees. Is that right?
That's correct. Through Mr. Chair, we did a little, we reviewed the policies and procedures, and the $150 that's paid per diem for attendance of conferences, that would continue to apply as well, I believe, for remote conferences. We discussed with the CAO, so that was determined. There's been no change when it comes to remote learning, and it's the same as in-person learning. So you will still be compensated for your time for attendance of those items.
Thank you for bringing that up, and Dennis, and thank Nancy for the information. Any other comments?
Is that, Mr. Chair, just quickly, along those lines, is the, Nancy, can you indicate is the vacation amount that used to be paid, is that all cleared up yet, or how much longer is involved in that, or does that depend on the member?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, can you clarify that, John?
Clarify it, John.
Remember we were paid our per diem and then so much per application, but the per application has not seemingly been applied for some time because some error was made in the past. Is that, I've never been clear about that. Do you know what the status of that is?
Through Mr. Chair, there was some errors made last year with respect to payment. So based on that, there may still be people were overpaid for some of their applications. And perhaps that's why you may not be seeing certain payments being made, but I think at this point we should be past that. And there is the standard fee that's being charged for, or rather being assessed for each of you to attend a site. And then there is now a fee that's also assessed if there is a deferred or a deferred item that comes back. It's an additional fee that would be charged back to one of you to re-attend the site.
Okay, it just seems to me nothing has really changed when I have an application, and I haven't had a lot in, so it hasn't been a great deal, but I was just wondering what the status was with it. So anyway, it's been a puzzle. And Dennis, thanks for bringing up the issue about the remote. That was something that had interested me as well.
Any further comments on any item?
Nope. The next meeting, we're good?
Ask for a motion to adjourn.
Are we
I'll
not
offer the motion.
with,
Pardon,
that
do?
back at the start, we had an application. Now, weren't we going to go to the end and finish going through that application? The application form, we were reviewing it. We didn't get that
Oh,
completed,
yes,
did we?
yes. Yes, sorry.
Got that completed.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I thought we had completed that item.
I thought we had two, now that I've looked at it. Yes.
Okay, my mistake.
Oop, we set off the fire.
So I'd ask for a motion for adjournment.
Andrews moves.
Moved by John Andrews,
I'm good. I'll second.
You don't need a second on adjournment.
No,
No,
we don't
sorry.
need one.
Mr. Chairman, I just, the date and time.
can't hear you, Dennis.
Before we close.
I can't hear you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think he asked the date of the next meeting, I believe,
Yeah.
Yep.
which is Wednesday, June 23rd.
Yeah, Wednesday, June 23rd.
Good.
Okay,
And at this time, it will still be remote unless circumstances change, and we'll let you know as things unfold.
I hope it's over pretty soon. But I'd like to thank all the members of staff, Nancy and Ashlyne and Dawn and it's hard for me to keep track of going back and forth and who's speaking, sorry.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. We'll see you next
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Thank
See
you.
later.
Bye.
Mr. Chair, thank you.